Ukraine Initiative. This editorial examines how President Trump's policies signal a significant reduction in U.S. involvement in the Ukraine conflict, while urging a recalibration of global alliances and peace efforts. Though Donald Trump has not been able to fulfill his promise of ending the Ukraine conflict 24 hours after taking office, the American president is clearly not interested in pumping more U.S. funds into this war. Not able to fulfill his promise means that despite his bold claim of a swift resolution, Trump did not deliver on that commitment. The phrase 24 hours is put in quotes to emphasize the unrealistic nature of his promise. Pumping more U.S. funds is a colloquial way of saying that he is not willing to invest additional money in the conflict. Moreover, his overtures to Russia and use of scathing language to target the Ukrainian president have sent shockwaves through Kyiv and European capitals. Overtures refers to diplomatic gestures, while scathing language means harsh, critical remarks. Sent shockwaves is an idiom, meaning these actions have had a profound and unsettling impact, influencing reactions in both Kyiv and major European cities. Mr. Trump is not a man known to indulge in diplomatic niceties, but the language he has used for the Ukrainian president has been unforgiving. Diplomatic niceties means polite, tactful expressions typically expected in diplomacy. Unforgiving indicates that his words were harsh and merciless, underscoring his blunt style. He has termed Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator and a moderately successful comedian, intent on keeping the American gravy train going. Here, dictator is used pejoratively to undermine Zelensky's legitimacy, and moderately successful comedian is a dismissive remark reducing his stature. Gravy train is an idiom referring to a lucrative, easy source of income, implying that Trump believes U.S. funds and resources are being used for political gain. This is as clear a signal as any that the flow of American funds and weapons to Kyiv is coming to an end. As clear a signal as any suggests that this remark is a definitive indication that U.S. support for Kyiv will be drastically reduced or stopped altogether. In fact, the Russian foreign minister and his American counterpart met in Riyadh on Tuesday to restart bilateral engagement, which had practically come to a stop under the Biden administration. Bilateral engagement refers to direct diplomatic discussions between two countries. The sentence indicates that the meeting in Riyadh marks a renewal of dialogue that had been nearly halted, implying a shift in U.S. foreign policy under Trump. All this signals that U.S. involvement in the Ukraine conflict will be considerably reduced, if not ended altogether. This concluding sentence of the first section asserts that the combined actions and rhetoric point toward a significant cutback or even complete cessation of U.S. support in Ukraine. In a few days, it will be 3 years since the Russians invaded Ukraine, with the conflict upending the international order and reviving the ghosts of the Cold War. Upending the international order means disrupting global norms and power structures, while reviving the ghosts of the Cold War is a metaphor indicating that the conflict has rekindled old, tense rivalries reminiscent of that era. It is high time that the war ended, but in a just and equitable manner. This is a normative statement arguing that the conflict should be resolved quickly, yet fairly, ensuring that all parties receive just treatment. Mr. Trump was clearly wrong when he accused Ukraine of starting the war, as it was Moscow that invaded its western neighbor. This sentence refutes Trump's claim by asserting that historical facts clearly indicate Russia initiated the conflict. But relations between the West and Russia had been deteriorating since before the invasion, with Moscow fearing that NATO was getting closer and closer to its borders. Deteriorating indicates worsening relations over time. The phrase getting closer and closer suggests a persistent and growing threat perceived by Moscow, with NATO's expansion being a key factor. The Ukraine conflict has, in fact, turned into a proxy war. Pitting NATO against Russia, there have been perilous moments where both sides have come close to a direct conflagration. Proxy war means that the conflict is not fought directly between the primary powers, but through supporting opposing sides. Direct conflagration is a metaphor for an all-out war, highlighting the potential danger of escalation. The American president is a major NATO skeptic, which would explain his urgency to wrap up this war. NATO skeptic means someone who doubts the value or reliability of NATO. This suggests that Trump's reluctance to invest further in the Ukraine conflict is partly rooted in his broader opposition to NATO's role. Reacting to the meeting between Russia and America's top diplomats in Riyadh, President Vladimir Putin said he is ready to return to the peace process. This reports Putin's response to the diplomatic engagement, indicating his willingness to resume peace talks. This resolve should be backed by confidence-building measures. Confidence-building measures are actions designed to reduce tensions and establish trust between conflicting parties. For a start, both sides should commit to an immediate ceasefire, while Moscow needs to recognize Ukraine's territorial sovereignty. The Soviet Union is now a part of history, and Russia should respect the independence of the ex-Soviet states. This sentence outlines concrete steps: an immediate halt to hostilities and Russia's recognition of Ukraine's borders. The reference to the Soviet Union underscores that outdated imperial ambitions must be abandoned. On the other hand, the NATO states cannot afford to treat Russia like a boogeyman and must engage with Moscow in a spirit of mutual respect, working for collective security. Bogeyman is a metaphor for an exaggerated threat. The sentence calls for NATO to adopt a more respectful and cooperative approach, emphasizing collective security rather than fear. It is difficult to say whether Mr. Trump's Ukraine peace initiative will succeed, but it will be very difficult for Kyiv and its European backers to face the Russian military machine without America's big guns and endless supply of dollars. This final sentence of the editorial acknowledges uncertainty about the success of Trump's initiative, while warning that Ukraine's ability to resist Russia is heavily dependent on American military and financial support. Published in Dawn, February 21, 2025.